Hey, welcome back to Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. I'm your host, Jon Braddock, author of Click Here When I Die and the founder of My Life and Wishes, the Legacy Vault, an online planning and document storage solution created to make things easier for those you love. This show is about talking with people about estate planning gone awry or estate planning that didn't happen. And the best part about the show for me is I get to talk to some really awesome people and cool people. And because it's my show, I get to pick who I talk to. So today we're joined by a very special guest, Ryan Anderson. Now, Ryan is a senior financial advisor, fiduciary, and managing partner at Retirement Fundamentals. He has over 30 years of experience in financial consulting, specializing in protecting and preserving assets, helping his clients navigate the complexities of Medicare, long-term care, life insurance, and so much more. But today, Ryan isn't just here as a financial expert. He's here to share a deeply personal story about his father's passing and the challenges his family faced during that time. So, Ryan, my friend, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. I didn't make one small correction. 30 years business management experience, only about 14 years in financial services. I want to make sure I get it out over there so the compliance people don't come back and get me. So just so
Yeah,
you're aware. But I've been doing it a long time and helping a lot of people.
there we go. You
So,
don't look old enough to have been doing it for 30 years. I, on the other hand, had a 32-year career in insurance, and I look.
I look at pictures of myself now compared to like 8 years ago, and my hair was dark. And I'm like, what happened? I'm 50 pounds heavier, hair's dark and it's turning gray. And my wife says, no, you're just getting more distinguished as you get older. It's like, let's just keep going with that.
Yeah,
But
we'll stay on that trend. Yeah, exactly. I look at my LinkedIn profile and it's like, oh, darker hair, short haircut. Now, it's all gray. And, I said I would actually, shave the beard and get a real short haircut as soon as it all went gray. I got to tell you, there's still two or three red ones down in there. And until that happens, we're sticking with it.
well, thank you. I appreciate you for having me on your show. When I met you, and I think it was Springfield, Missouri earlier this year, we were out there for an event and I came
Austin,
across your
Austin,
stuff.
Texas,
Oh,
actually.
Austin. You're right.
Yeah.
Austin. Okay. Thank you. Different. Man, I travel too much, but it really, some of the things you had really struck a chord with me as far as from my own personal stuff here. So with your permission, I'll just kind of get into it, what we had happening.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
my mom passed away. She had breast cancer and passed away about 15 years ago, 16 years ago. And she was fairly young, late 50s, early 60s, right in there. And it's a shame I don't know the exact number, but I think it was like 61. And the thing about it is, and she'd been dealing with that for 4 or 5 years. And as a result of that, we weren't thinking life insurance. We weren't thinking the estate planning, all of that stuff. And when she did die, it was rather suddenly. We thought she was kind of rebounding and she passed away. And we had to deal with a lot of the legal stuff that came with it. Fast forward it, I got into financial services a few years after that happened. And I sat down with my dad and said, hey, I don't want to have to go through what we did with mom with you. And so we went down, we created a trust. We created the living will. We got the advanced health directives. We got the power of attorneys. We did the general assignment. We got all the documents done. It's all there. It's beautiful. And he was living in Bremerton, Washington at that point in time. A couple of years later, he went through, sold the house, bought a fifth wheel and a pickup truck, and started touring the U.S. And he spent the next 3 or 4 years basically went to all 48 the lower 48 and just kind of toured that. And in that point of time, his health started to take a turn. He had pulmonary fibrosis, so he had to be on oxygen part of the time at night when he slept. And he got wet macular degeneration, which meant that his eyes were deteriorating. He had to get shots in his eyes every 3 to 6 weeks depending on the course of treatment. And so he decided, all right, I'm not going to drive anymore. Sold the camper, sold the truck, bought a condo in someplace south of Salt Lake, Utah. And he lived there for 2 or 3 years. And if you're familiar with that area, the pollution's fairly heavy. There's a lot of it's hard to breathe in the winter. And he, because of his lung problems, says, okay, Salt Lake's not working for me now. So he moved to North Texas. Um, went off, got a place down there in Amarillo, enjoying the warm, the clean air. Everything was going well. And then this actually was February of this year. He went in the hospital, and while he was there, he got pneumonia and he had a couple of other things that came up that were all pulmonary related. And up until that point of time, he had capacity. He was competent. He made his own decisions. Then he became incapacitated. They had to put a ventilator on him. And at that point of time, he could no longer make his own medical decisions. Now, the thing about it is that we had gone through and we'd created all these documents, and when he was living at home and when he in the house in Bremerton, but over the next 10 years, 8 years, whatever it was, he had moved 3 times and he had visited all of my siblings' homes, and we had boxes all over the country that belonged to dad. And we could not find these documents when he went into capacity. Now, as it was explained to me, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not giving legal advice here, but this is how it was explained to me. The way that Texas law worked was that next of kin can make medical decisions. And next of kin was defined as a spouse or children. And so my mom had passed away, which is why I mentioned that at the beginning. And so she's out of the picture. So now it's children get to make the decision. Now, the thing about it, it's not children nominate a child, a sibling to take care of it. All of the children have to make these decisions together. I failed to mention that I've got 7 brothers and sisters, and we are in every single time zone between Anchorage, Alaska, and Washington, D.C. So 5 time zones, 7 people, and we had to give all of our instructions in writing. So, yeah. And and so what happened was, so my sisters were there and with down there in the hospital, and they would go through and they'd talk to the doctor, make the decision. They'd say, okay, this is what we need to do. We would then get a DocuSign document emailed to all of us that we had to go through and sign in order to get that thing done. And this went on, went on, went on, went on. And over about, we were there about a week. And the thing about it is that over the course of that week, the course of treatment got to be more aggressive, got to be more aggressive. Then finally, the doctor said, hey, your dad's got about multiple organ failure. He's got lung condition. He's got, and he just went down this laundry list of items. And he said, long story short, your dad's not walking out of here. I recommend we take him off life support. And this ventilator is what was keeping him alive. And we agreed to that. He told us that. Now, mind you, we are looking for these documents. What happened that they exist, we couldn't find them. They were, again, we are tearing each other's houses apart. We are looking at stuff. We could not find them. There were the advanced directive, all of these things. We couldn't find them. So if one of my siblings didn't agree with the course of action and they didn't sign it, they could take no action. So then the doctor said we need to go through and take him off life support. Now, my dad he was a very pragmatic kind of a guy, and he had told us all in no uncertain terms, I don't want to be on life support. If that happens, pull the plug. And he had told us this. We knew this. There's a big difference between knowing that and getting an email that says the following actions will effectively end your father's life. We need your written permission to do it. Sign here. Literally signing your parents' death warrant. And I've got a sister that really is still struggling with that. Now, mind you, so we did, and we all agreed to it, and we did the necessary steps. They took him off the ventilator, and he passed within about 20 minutes. But I never regained consciousness, so he just kind of slipped away in his sleep. And the thing about it is we did eventually find the documents. They were underneath, they were in a box in his condo, underneath some canned vegetables, which I don't know why he'd put his documents and pile vegetable cans on top of it that he never really unpacked. Maybe it was,
you got to
I'm not
hide
sure.
those documents so that the wrong eyes, don't see them. And so put them under something. But
Yeah,
if you're going to do that, tell your family where they are.
well, that's it.
It's
But
such an amazing thing because, advanced directives, as you and I know, and hopefully all of our listeners know, these are critical. Advanced directives give you a voice when you no longer have one.
Yeah.
And the challenge with that, in your case, dad had one. That was great, but no one can find it. Now you've got 7 siblings. And, here's the challenge. So 7 siblings growing up together. when it came time to pick dinner, do you guys all agree on the same thing? When it
You think
when
we
it
got a
came,
choice?
yeah,
7 kids, and it was hot brown and lots of it. I mean, it was.
and plenty of gravy. When it came to what movie y'all gonna watch, nobody
Oh
could
yeah.
agree, or what TV show. And so when it comes to these life and end of life
Hmm.
decisions, families are not going to agree. Someone, like you said, you could have a sister that says, well, if there's even a glimmer of hope, I'm
Yeah.
not going to sign it.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is that for him, even more so than that, he made some decisions that he changed his mind on. And so let me give you this example. My mom had a traditional burial. She was embalmed. There was a casket, and all that was done. And that was about 15 years ago. And that's what my dad wanted to have done until about 5 years after my mom passed away. I've got a sister and her husband that work very extensively in funeral services. They're both funeral directors. And he got looking at it. He says, you know what? I actually think I want to be cremated. And that was a change that he made in his 60s. He passed away at 78, 79. And so he was in his late 60s and said, I want to be cremated. And we had this conversation, and not all of my siblings knew that was what he wanted. And so we had to go through and the basically have this conversation. And because we had the documents that said, hey, he wants to be cremated, but if we don't have those final disposition documents in place and nowhere to get them, as it turned out, my sister did have a copy of that one, so we didn't need to worry about it. She's the one that was in funeral services and said, I'm going to be the one that has to sort this out, sign this, and she stuck it in a file in her office. But that kind of a thing where your services, where it's an online vault, where there's digital, no matter where you're at, it's fireproof, it's loss proof. If you got access to it, it's amazing. And doing what I do now with retirement fundamentals, and our website's retirementfundamentals.org, we actually do estate planning workshops with folks. We sit down and go through this. And a catalyst for it was my personal experience that I had. And it's like, we've got to do more of this, and making sure that having the online vault, that we added that to the services because of my experience. And so it's like, man, this is something that people just don't think about.
Oh, exactly. And I appreciate that, because that's the thing, that it's like, until people go through the scenario,
Hmm.
situation, or see it happen to someone else close in the family, they
Hmm.
just don't really think about all the things that are critically important. It's like, you talk about your dad and changing his mind. Well, in my book, Click Here When I Die, I reference my friend Nick,
Hmm.
who was in his early 20s. He had one sister who was kind of estranged from the mother, and father was out of the picture. Mom dies tragically in a car accident.
Hmm.
Nick has to step up and do everything. He didn't know what to do. So went to funeral home, made arrangements, had mom buried, all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't until quite some time later, when he was digging through his mom's house, finds a notebook and jot down in there, yeah, I think I'm gonna be cremated. He's like, seriously, mom? So, as Nick said to me when I first told him about the project we were embarking on with the Legacy Vault,
Hmm.
he said, I wish I'd known mom wanted to be cremated before I buried her.
Yeah. It's funny that doing what I do, I had I've worked with a lot of hundreds and hundreds of families over the last 15 years. And one of the things about it is I went and I sat down with a lady one time, a wonderful lady, and I showed up there to help her with her Medicare. This was, easy 10 years ago. And I went in there and she said, okay, I'm here to help with Medicare. It was the annual enrollment period. And she says, my husband just died. And she literally had a stack of documents this tall that were from insurance companies, that were advertisements, that were different financial advisors and everything else. And she said, I have no idea what I've got. And she thought that she was going to have to sell the house. She thought she had a social security was her only income. And that was it, because he took care of all of that and she let him. And so I sat down with her for 2 hours. We went over all this stuff. And by the time I walked out of there, she found out that he had a pension she had no idea about. His Social Security was significantly more than hers, which she didn't know about. And we found almost $250,000 in an IRA that she didn't even know she had. And so this is one of those things that, as we're talking about this, having the documents laid out, having a proper estate plan that includes your powers of attorney, that includes a list of assets, that has that general assignment, that has all of those different things in there, so that when the whole click here when I die thing, it's no, let's take a step back. Click here if I go in the hospital, that click here if I'm in a car accident. I mean, whatever it might be, where those things are done in advance. And I mean, think about this. How many people know? So if I was to die today, what, I mean, does your family know what the first steps are? Who do I call? How do I know what insurances have I got? What are my, how do I get the body removed? I mean, on and on and on and on. What are the steps to that? And people don't know this.
No, and and that's the thing. It's like when that happens and they don't know where to turn or go,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't properly plan and make sure everything was organized and say, here's my death book or here's my death vault. Everything you're going to need, all you have to do is something bad happens to me, go here. It'll give you everything you know. Without that, families are left with what I refer to as the morbid scavenger hunt. That's
Oh yeah.
where my kids have to come to my house and dig through all dead dad's stuff, trying to
Mm-hmm.
find out, is there a life insurance policy? Is there a will or a trust? Where did he bank? What credit cards did he have? Who's his financial advisor so we can see if he has life insurance or not? Who's the attorney? Much less take down my 457 digital identities, because they don't want to get a pop-up next month on Facebook that says, hey, wish dad a happy birthday.
My mom's she's been dead 16 years, 15 years. I can't remember how long it's been, but her Facebook account's still active. I get notifications from that, and the thing about it, and that oddly enough, my dad, he traveled a lot and he used to walk, and he liked playing Pokemon Go.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his grandkids said, when you die, I want your Pokemon Go account. That's what he wanted to be bequeathed, was his video game account, because he spent so many hours each night walking, because if he didn't, his lungs would deteriorate. So he'd go on these 3 or 4 mile walks every night. And he had some super high level in this game. I don't know how it works, but my one of his grandsons was like, I want that. And so
Yeah, so the grandson needs to obviously download the Pokemon Go onto their own smartphone and then know the login credentials.
yeah.
And without those login credentials, know.
The thing about it is that one of the things when I was an active insurance agent and I was going through doing Medicare and stuff, one of the things that I always do is I take my business card with a magnet on it and I would put it on my client's fridge. And they said, and I tell them, I'm putting this here so if something happens to you and your family comes in here, they're going to look at your fridge and they're going to see Ryan Anderson, insurance agent, Ryan Anderson, financial advisor, whatever my role was. They're going to know to call me. And I have gotten more than one phone call said, hey, we've got your card off of our mom or dad's fridge. What was your relationship with them? And it's like, okay, first of all, sorry for your loss. And second of all, yes, these are the policies they had. And let me go through and help with this. And a couple of times, they had a long-term care policy that I connected the home family with, that the person that was protected never bothered to tell their family existed. And so for the last 6-8 months, they were in a care facility and paying out of pocket for it. And we were able to go back and actually get that rebuild to the insurance policy when we found out after they died. But it's and to sit down and to go through, and this is one of the beautiful things about this, is that I have seen it time and time again. And this is the way I think it works, is that the thought process that I've seen, those things don't happen to me, they happen to other people. Is that, I mean, have you seen that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Not going to happen to me. I've got time and all that kind of stuff. But you make a great point on that long-term care policy, and this
Mhm.
is why, folks, having the best possible advisors you can have in
Mhm.
your corner. That's kind of your ultimate plan, right? You've got the best estate planning attorney, you get the best financial advisor, because these folks paid for 6 months to long-term care or whatever the scenario was. Then they
Mhm.
find an insurance policy or long-term care. um, Most people don't know what to do with that. You've got to work
Yeah.
with an advisor who says, wait a minute, let's go back and let's make claim on that and get those funds back, because those funds are part of the estate. And,
Yeah.
and in care or inpatient assisted living or long-term care on a monthly basis, depending on what state you're in,
Mhm.
that's huge.
You know, I had a guy I used to work with, a really, really brilliant man in the insurance world. I mean, he's been one of those old sages that's been just around forever. His name's Clay Leggett, and he is a owner and founder of a couple of very large insurance companies out there. I used to get up in front of the group and ask this question. I heard him tell the story several times, and he'd say, "So, what is the most important insurance policy for a person to have?" And we'd sit back and somebody say, "Oh, life insurance or oh, Medicare or whatever it might be." It's like, no, no. The most important insurance policy for a person to have is the one that is in effect when they need it. And one of the things about insurance is we don't know what it is. But let me just give you another personal story here that kind of
Yes,
that
please.
illustrates the importance of these documents and actually knowing what's in them and how to find them. And this comes back to the whole, we don't know that these things don't happen to us. They happen to other people until they happen to us. About 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that, my wife and I were living in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, way up north in Idaho. And it's kind of a
Beautiful part of the world.
wonderful place. We really, it's gorgeous. 6 months of snow of year, I didn't like that. So that's why we left. But one of the things about it is that uh, the last week of February, because of the snow and everything else, my wife and I, we went to Mexico every year. And so that last week of February, sometime in February, that was our trip. And we did this like normal. And my wife's mother was living down in southern Idaho, a little town called Caldwell. And we were actually planning to move there to be closer to her because her health was deteriorating. And we said, "Hey, we're going to be out of town for the next week or so. Just, we're not going to call you. Just be aware. No problem." Anyways, the day we left, she had a fall. She doesn't call it a fall. She called it a controlled descent. And she ended up laying on the living room floor for 8 days before somebody found her. And yeah, terrible,
Oh
terrible.
my God.
And she should have passed away from that. But as it turns out, she went in the hospital, and there's a lot of health concerns with that. And the doctor said, "Why didn't you get up? Your phone was 10 feet away. Why didn't you call for help? This doesn't make sense." So they did a brain scan because they thought maybe she'd had a stroke that affected cognitive abilities. Turns out she had a brain tumor about the size of a fist that sat right on her frontal lobe that messed with her decision making processes. And it also caused her to be very lethargic. And so for the 8 to 10 years before this, she lived in a chair for 20, 22 hours a day. And she just recliner, watch TV, get up to eat, go to the bathroom, and back to her chair. I personally just thought she was, getting old and slowing down and just didn't want to move. But it was actually a side effect of this tumor. And as it turns out, it kind of, because she was so lethargic and she was so sedentary for so many years, she actually trained for this laying on the floor for 8 days. It would kill you and I, but because she had been so sedentary, her body was used to it. And then, so anyway, long story short, neighbor found her. She went in the hospital. We found the brain tumor. And my wife and I, we found this out the day we were moving back to, um, what do you call it? We were moving to Caldwell. And so we've got 5 kids. Our child was a senior in high school. And he said, "No, I'm not going to move with you, Mom, Dad. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay up here and I'll come down when school's over." I'm not going to make a kid move the 2 months before his senior year's over. That's just kind of a jerk move. So that's fine. We took care of him. So my wife and I were literally empty nesters for like 6 hours until we found out that my mother-in-law had to have brain surgery and she moved in with us. So that was not part of our plan. Grandma moving in with us because she had a brain tumor. She got better. She made full recovery, active, going out gardening. I've not seen her this active in years. Then my son graduated from high school. He was going to go off and be a missionary for our church to the Dominican Republic for 2 years. About a month before he left, 3 weeks before he was supposed to leave, and that he got diagnosed with leukemia. So he's now home. I work from home most days, and so I had to remodel our house, build a new office, put him in the house, and we didn't expect that to happen. So literally, in the matter of just 6 months, we moved. We went through. We had a parent with a brain tumor. We had a child with leukemia, and we had to go through all of this. None of that was on our agenda, and it is all basically that these things don't happen to you until they do. And so having the insurances and having the plan in place, we had long-term care insurance for my mother-in-law. I was her insurance agent, so I knew what it was, which was lucky. But those are the types of things if you don't have a plan in place and actually have people who know what the plan is, that can mess you up, destroy you financially and emotionally. It's terrible.
Oh yeah, and again, the importance of working with an advisor, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know all the things that could happen to me,
Mm-mm.
but when you work with a professional advisor, it's like, if something were to happen to your mother-in-law or your father-in-law,
Yeah.
what's the next step? Do they have a plan? Do they have long-term care? Do they have assets? Are they moving in with you? Are you prepared for that? What about something happens to yourself or your spouse?
Yeah.
Heart attacks happen, strokes happen, car accidents happen, and God forbid, a diagnosis, like your son
Yeah.
received.
And I got to tell you, it's these types of experiences over the last few years and seeing them is what caused us to form Retirement Fundamentals. It is an educational organization. Website again, retirementfundamentals.org. And the idea is that if you have a question retirement related, we try to put videos out there. We try to put content out there to help people answer questions so that they've got it. And then if you have a need, we can connect you with a local advisor, something like that. But that is the sheer idea is hubris to think we know it all when there's so much out there. Most of us only retire once. We need help with this. So going through and getting some help with it, I think, is a good decision to make. And if nothing else, get a second opinion. Oh my word. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, a shout out to retirementfundamentals.org. You all have a lot of great content out there, things that help educate people. You have advisors all across the country. So
Mm-hmm.
people can reach out, they can go there, you can put them in touch with the right people, do the right
Mm-hmm.
planning, be it if they need an estate plan, long-term care, Medicare planning, life insurance, the
We
list
got it all.
goes
One
on.
stop shopping.
Absolutely. Hey, well, man, it is awesome to see you again. We've known each other probably about 4 or 5 months now. You had me
Mm-hmm.
on one of your shows. Now
Yep.
you're on mine. I know we're building an amazing relationship. Is there any like final words or advice that you'd provide to people?
I would go through and hope is not a plan. It's nice to have, but hope is not a plan. Put a plan in place and make sure that people know what the plan is. And the other thing is that yes, you can go online and you can download a will and a trust and you can get those free ones out there. And they're probably written pretty well, but one of their problems is they're written pretty well. And so if they say something you don't want it to say, it's enforced and a lot. So get some help with it. Spend a little bit of time, spend a little of your resources to get a plan in place. Make sure it's exactly what you want, and have some professionals help you out there. It's not nearly as costly as people think it is, and the heartache and the pain that it will save you is priceless. So don't just hope for the best, plan for the best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, hey, man, again, thank you for sharing your personal stories with us. I know it's
No
it's it's
problem.
hard to do sometimes, but I know that you share your personal stories much like I do to help other people avoid what can
Yeah.
happen. So one last time again, how can people reach you? And I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Retirement fundamentals. So retirementfundamentals.org, and go down there, and there's a link as far as, and we've got lots of educational videos there. We've also got our podcast that we're just going to YouTube and type retirement fundamentals, and there you can see the YouTube podcast, and they've got lots of videos, just question and answer type things. But go there and then go ahead and find us and give us a call, and we can, if we're able to help you, we'll connect you with somebody local that can do that for you.
Thank you, Ryan. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Estate Planning Nightmares and How to Avoid Them. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, leave us a review. Feel free to share it with someone who might benefit from. And remember, your life is your legacy. So plan ahead and make it a great day.